Turning now to the ongoing search for Savannah's mom, Nancy, now entering its fourth week. Volunteer groups now canvassing the neighborhood around her home. The sheriff saying leads are still pouring in. NBC's Liz Kreutz remains in Tucson for us this morning. Hi, Liz. Good morning.
Hi, Hoda. Good morning to you. Let's hope that this week 4 brings some of those answers we desperately need. While the sheriff says there's still no suspect, he does say he believes they're closer to identifying more of the clothes that the kidnapper was wearing. But he also acknowledges that processing the DNA at the home has been challenging.
What if the most powerful weapon in this entire kidnapping case wasn't a gun, but a microphone? The night Nancy Guthrie vanished, the security feed was cut. Her pacemaker went offline, and blood was found on the porch.
We have DNA.
In that moment, so everyone expected one thing.
If we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we're continue to work with the lab on that DNA analysis.
Is that DNA that you have, you believe, might be the suspects? It just doesn't match anyone in a lab? Or
what we have is we have some DNA, and we don't know whose it is. So we'll keep looking.
Well, that's significant.
Well, it is, yeah.
And that was from the house?
I'm not telling you where it was. We have DNA.
Everyone thought DNA would end it. Case closed, handcuffs, headlines fade. Instead, we got a press conference and 5 carefully chosen words from Sheriff Nanos. The results are mixed, hopeful, and still being analyzed in our lab.
The other interesting thing he talked about is challenges with the DNA, which we hadn't heard that they were having challenges. He says that their Florida lab that they're using is having challenges because the DNA is mixed, is what he said. Which is causing delays in testing the DNA. So that's obviously not good news. We'll have to see. I mean, the science is changing so quickly with DNA testing.
That wasn't a manhunt update. It sounded more like reassurance. So here's the question. When a sheriff says the DNA results are complicated instead of conclusive, who is he reassuring? The public or the person responsible? This is where it gets uncomfortable. Sources say the sample may be thin, partial, possibly too limited for a clear CODIS match. But that isn't how it was presented on camera. Publicly, it sounded like steady progress. Privately, the situation may be more uncertain. Did Sheriff Nanos choose his words carefully to prevent panic? Or did that message buy the suspect something valuable? Time. Because this isn't just about DNA. It's about how information is delivered and what happens when the messaging sounds stronger than the evidence itself.
We know that this is something that the Pima County Sheriff's Department is looking at when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie case. How long can it take, though, when you have a potential DNA sample and you go through this route of genetic genealogy?
The morning after that press conference, Pima County woke up confused. Not outraged, not panicked, confused. And confusion is dangerous in a case that should be clear. Nancy Guthrie didn't simply go missing. She disappeared within a 40-minute window between 1:42 a.m. and 2:23 a.m. Her porch camera went dark.
It can take quite a bit of time. Now, fortunately, the sheriff sent the DNA to a private lab that is kind of a one-stop shop. They're great at extracting the DNA from the evidence and then creating 2 separate profiles. The one that's uploaded to CODIS, the type of profile law enforcement has used for decades, and then the different type of profile that we need for genetic genealogy. And so it will save time to send it there because they were able to create both of those profiles in parallel. So we don't lose time when they don't get a CODIS hit, they can jump right to the genetic genealogy. Once they get that profile created, which is hundreds of thousands of genetic markers across the genome, I hear it's a mixture in this case, at least one of the samples. So then they have to work with the bioinformatics scientists to separate out that DNA and make sure that they are working on the person of interest DNA. Then once that's done, it's uploaded to the databases that have agreed to work with law enforcement on the genealogy side. Unfortunately, even though there are over 50 million people who have taken direct-to-consumer DNA tests, the top 3 companies have barred law enforcement's use. And so we are limited to the 3 smallest databases, GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice.
Her medical device disconnected. A faint smear of blood was found near the doorway. No signs of forced entry were publicly released. No suspect was named, just a carefully worded update and a sheriff at a podium saying the DNA results presented challenges. But no one asked the obvious follow-up that morning. What kind of challenges? The kind you resolve in days, or the kind that stall a case indefinitely? Behind the scenes, speculation began moving faster than official updates. A source claiming ties to the forensic process reportedly suggested the DNA recovered inside Nancy's home was low yield. Not dramatic, not definitive, just limited material to work with. And limited material means limited matching power. That detail was not part of the public briefing. Instead, the tone was steady, controlled, reassuring. Our lab is working diligently, the sheriff said. The testing was being handled by DNA Labs International, a private lab located out of state. Some questioned why the evidence was not immediately sent to the FBI's Quantico facility. The official explanation was consistency in procedure. Critics called it a matter of oversight and control. 2 weeks before Nancy disappeared, there had already been internal discussion within the department about budget allocations and forensic contracts. Nothing criminal, but the timing drew attention. Now, the same contracted lab was handling the most critical piece of biological evidence in the county's highest profile case. At the same time, public messaging shifted. Savannah Guthrie initially spoke about bringing her mother home. Days later, her language changed to recovery. That distinction matters. It reflects a shift in tone, if not in expectation. Meanwhile, the DNA was described as mixed. Mixed can mean complex. It can also mean contaminated by routine activity inside a home. Family members, guests, workers. In those situations, isolating a clean, unknown profile becomes more difficult. If the unknown sample is weak, progress slows. Imagine hearing that from the other side. If you were responsible and you heard challenges, mixed, months, you would not hear immediate threat. You would hear time. And time allows people to adjust behavior, to relocate, to remove items, to limit communication. So here is the question. If the DNA had been strong and conclusive, would the language have sounded the same? In high-profile investigations, silence can be strategic, but reassurance can also send a message. Right now, in Pima County, attention is focused not just on what was said, but on what was not.
I'm coming on to say it is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed. And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then, of worrying about her, fearing for her, aching for her, and most of all, just missing her, We know that millions of you have been praying. So many people have been praying of every faith and no faith at all, praying for her return, and we feel those prayers. Please keep praying without ceasing. We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home.
What happened next did not erupt into headlines. It simmered quietly, and in many cases, scandals that simmer can be more dangerous than those that explode. 3 days after Sheriff Nanos reassured the public that everything was under control, something unusual began unfolding behind the scenes. According to reports, an internal memo was circulated within Pima County's investigative unit. The memo allegedly indicated that the unidentified DNA sample might not meet the required standards for entry into CODIS, the combined DNA index system used by law enforcement nationwide. It wasn't described as a delay. It was something else entirely.
Let's take a listen to this new message from Savannah Guthrie.
Not processing, not almost there, not eligible. That is a completely different headline. Officially, no one confirmed the memo. DNA Labs International declined to comment. The FBI stayed quiet. But anonymous chatter began surfacing across forums, local radio, even a late-night segment on Fox 10. One unnamed forensic consultant reportedly told a producer, if the profile can't enter the national database, you're basically hoping for a miracle match later. A miracle. That's not science. That's desperation in a lab coat. And this is where it becomes uncomfortable. Why keep emphasizing patience? Why publicly suggest results could take months, maybe a year? When law enforcement telegraphs timelines, they are not just informing the public, they may also be informing the suspect. Meanwhile, public pressure was building in a different direction. Savannah Guthrie's $1 million reward announcement sent tip lines into overdrive. 88 crime. Anonymous reported an unprecedented spike in anonymous submissions, some credible, many chaotic. One caller claimed to have seen a dark SUV circling Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood days before the disappearance. Another said a masked figure had knocked on doors weeks earlier, allegedly testing cameras. Then came the twist. ABC News reported that one surveillance image released by authorities was not from the night Nancy vanished. It was from days earlier. Same house, same porch, same masked figure. 2 visits. That detail changes everything. This does not look spontaneous. It looks rehearsed. Someone may have scoped the property, assessed angles, studied lighting, possibly identified blind spots. Which makes the DNA even more critical. Because when you are dealing with premeditation, you are likely dealing with preparation, gloves, coverings, control. If biological evidence was left behind, it was likely minimal. So when Sheriff Nanos kept repeating mixed DNA, critics began asking whether that phrase was technically accurate, but strategically vague. Mixed with what? Family members? Medical responders? Normal household contact? If most of what was collected belonged to Nancy or people legally inside that home, then the issue is not abundance, it is scarcity. And scarcity changes everything. A retired detective speaking anonymously on News Nation put it bluntly, if the DNA is thin, you do not buy time, you create urgency. But urgency was not the tone from the podium. Calm was, measured was, hopeful was. And hope can be powerful. But in investigations, hope without clarity can look like cover. At this point, Pima County was not just managing a kidnapping case, it was managing perception. 2 senior figures within Pima County law enforcement, speaking anonymously, reportedly told CNN that the internal mood had shifted from confidence to containment. Containment of what? Not the suspect, the narrative. According to those accounts, the fear was not that the kidnapper would escape, but that the public would realize how fragile the forensic evidence might be. If the DNA were solid, there would likely be quiet focus. Instead, there were repeated interviews, repeated reassurance, repeated emphasis on patience. That is messaging, and messaging becomes necessary when momentum slows. Meanwhile, the FBI's Quantico lab remained noticeably silent. No confirmation of parallel testing, no dramatic breakthrough language, just stillness. That made one comment on News Nation stand out. A forensic expert explained that partial DNA samples, especially low-level mixtures, can sometimes produce results through advanced SNP profiling, but only if there is enough genetic material to begin with. If the unknown contributor is too faint, she said, you may extract data, but not identity. Extract data, not identity. That line spread quickly because identity is the entire point. And if identity is not coming from science, it has to come from somewhere else. Witnesses, surveillance, a mistake, or a confession. Suddenly, the $1 million reward looked less like confidence and more like strategy. Money can loosen silence. It can test loyalty. It can fracture alliances. Former prosecutor Richard Carmona said during a television interview that in high-profile investigations, transparency must be balanced with tactical discipline. You never want to unintentionally signal weakness. Imagine being the person responsible for Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. You are watching updates. You hear months. You hear hopeful. You hear debates about database eligibility and partial profiles. You do not see urgency. You see breathing room. And breathing room can build confidence. So the real question remains, was Sheriff Nanos maintaining calm in a chaotic case, or did that calm project vulnerability? Leadership in a crisis is a narrow line. Lean too far into secrecy and trust erodes. Lean too far into reassurance and the suspect gains comfort. Pima County now stands at that edge. The reward exceeds $1 million. Tips continue. Surveillance review expands. But the DNA, once seen as the potential breakthrough, remains uncertain. And uncertainty fuels speculation. This case is no longer just about who took Nancy Guthrie. It is about whether carefully chosen words, calmly delivered, reshaped the battlefield. The evidence may be partial. The consequences will not be.
Our Nancy Lou back there in Tucson, we just listened to that together for the first time. Nancy Lou, that was just absolutely heart-wrenching and very powerful. Yeah. Asking for anybody like, now is your moment. This is it. What did you make of the words and the reward that was offered, and also a reward for other missing families who are dealing with unbearable loss as well?
Yeah, it's just heart-wrenching to see and hear, and you just feel that pain that they are going through. But a $1 million family reward, I mean, that's remarkable. And hopefully that does bring the information that can, crack this case. And sadly, she also acknowledged that Nancy Guthrie may already be gone home to heaven, but they need to know where she is.
So now I'm handing this to you, because this case is no longer sitting inside Pima County files. It's sitting in your hands. One vanished woman, one masked figure who may have rehearsed the crime twice, one DNA sample that could be powerful or painfully thin, one sheriff walking the line between calm leadership and catastrophic miscalculation, and more than $1 million waiting for the one person brave or desperate enough to speak. Ask yourself something. If the evidence were airtight, would the language feel this careful? If the suspect felt cornered, would there be this much silence? And if the DNA truly cannot deliver an identity, then who will? Because somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Someone saw something unusual. Someone heard something that was dismissed as nothing. Someone is holding a detail that seems insignificant until it isn't. History has shown this again and again. Cases do not always break because of laboratories. They break because of people. So here's what I want to hear from you. Drop your theory below. Is law enforcement playing it smart or playing it safe? Do you believe the DNA is stronger than they are admitting or weaker than they are letting on? Share this with someone who follows real investigations closely, because the louder the questions become, the harder it is for the truth to stay hidden. And in a case built on partial evidence and carefully chosen words, sometimes public pressure becomes the final piece that forces everything into the open.